I was just under 10 when I found out that we could die. That life and the people I loved weren't as safe as I thought. I almost threw up when I found out that death was something I just had to accept. I don't remember how or exactly when I found out, but I remember the awareness stinging. It was all over me and sharp, like the light that hits your eyes when you open them for the first time. Of course, to begin with, I refused to believe it. Death was only something that happened on TV and not in real life, and it certainly didn't happen to my family. I mean, why would it? Why would anything have to die? The idea made no sense to me, but as much as I tried, I couldn't shake it. And death only dug itself deeper into the back of my mind until I became feverish and hot, sickened by this silent wound. That night I had one of my first nightmares, one that I would have again and again for many years afterwards, one so eerie and inescapable that I am here now, a decade later, still writing about it. The nightmare always began with an unlit TV screen, reflecting the fuzzy outline of my body in its still, inky face. The screen and the surrounding walls would then shrink away from me, as if I were being plucked into the sky by a giant, until I was looking down at the roof of my house and the frantic swinging of my legs. There would be a moment of me watching, and then I would be pulled further away and dragged higher into the sky until my town with all its life laid before me, winking with the light of passing cars. Then again, the world would fall away, and the nightmare always ended with me in space, confronted by the fragile sphere of Earth, turning in the nothingness of space. And it was that final part that always scared me most. It was this final image that reminded me that after life there was nothing, that the world couldn't begin again the way TV shows did. I suppose it only scared me because it told me the things I didn't want to hear, the obvious truths that my heart couldn't take. I was terrified because it showed me that life was final and cruel and much too quick to enjoy. I always woke up crying afterwards, my skin slick with sweat and tears, and I would run across the hall into my mum's room and throw myself into her, forcing myself between her arms and feeling along her chest for a heartbeat. The first time it happened, I couldn't even explain the nightmare to her, and all I could do was cry until I almost threw up. It was then, once I'd managed the words and explained, that Mum lifted my face to hers, kissed me on the forehead and whispered, "I'm afraid that's just how life is." I remember breaking down to tears again and feeling as if my heart was turning inwards on itself. I was terrified by her very acceptance. When I learned about death, the world around me changed, and so did my mind. My body unraveled into something I could no longer understand or control. It seemed to taunt me as a reminder of what waited, of the sharp whispers beneath my skull, and soon I thought about my body as much as I did death, and I kept my palm pressed below my collarbone, searching for an uncertain beat of my heart, a sign I was dying. I stopped speaking halfway through sentences so I could listen to my breathing and feel the tight swell of my lungs. I watched the slow rise and fall of my granddad's chest and counted how many times my sister coughed in a day. I spent my days mourning those around me, including myself, and at the time I didn't really know why. Now I realised that I was mourning the very fact that we were alive. My body quickly became something I didn't want, and all I could feel was my skin stiffening around me like fresh leather, like meat hung out to dry. And although my nightmares continued, I started dreaming too, of being light and without skin. I dreamed of escaping the body and the death that came with it. In these dreams, I'd free my family and we'd swim upwards into the sky, spinning and see-through. Sometimes we were animals, like birds or deep-sea fish, and we would glide alongside each other. Back then, I thought animals experienced freedom, but now I don't think they do. Sure, they're closer to it than us, but still, they have bodies. And true freedom, to me, exists only outside the skin. This discomfort, of course, only worsened with puberty. And it was then, around 14, that I learned about performing. The kind of performing where the body is both the stage and the actor. The kind that hurts after a while. I learned about audiences and the warmth that came from applause. I learned that an audience could transform your body into something beautiful, something to be celebrated. That is, only if you perform well, relentlessly and ignorant to the pain. And I was more than willing. But what I didn't realise at 14 was that others could climb on stage if they really wanted to. And sometimes they did, with rough hands and sharp eyes. I didn't know at the time that you didn't have to share the stage, that you didn't have to make room or make do. I didn't realise that I didn't have to perform in the first place. But I, riddled with grief, was willing. Performing, I think now, was a way for me to distract myself from death, a way to paint the body as something useful, as something to give, to savour, before it rotted away. Performing was dangerous and ultimately useless. I mean, I was still terrified and still haunted by the very fact I was alive. And even though I knew no God, I prayed for there to be a place after life, a way for my family and I to live again. And even though I knew no way, I begged to be unborn, so that I didn't have to die. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure death is something I can fully accept now, even at 19. And I dread the moment my younger brother realises, and his eyes can't help but darken. I dread the nights he will run to me and feel for my heart, and I dread having to tell him that there's nothing he can do about it, that that's just the way life is. I was just under 20 when death became something I could talk about, that is, without immediately feeling ill. And sometimes mortality crashes over me like high summer, blistering my skin. And sometimes death is all I can think about. But here I am, writing about it as if it can no longer touch me. Stupid, I know. The body feels like something I could manage, and as I'm writing this, I cannot remember the last time I dreamt of Earth, that open wound, churning in its bed of nothingness. Now I only dream of love and the day I stop performing. I dream of being 9 and pressed between the warm arms of my mum. I dream of our bodies as a maze, one you can choose to either escape or accept. I'm still not sure which one is more painful.